Hi guys, thanks for choosing my channel to get your information on this Strix Halo situation that's been going on the past few months with the Linux kernel and the AMD firmware not working nicely together, and this has prevented the hardware from the hardware architecture from working, and this has completely crippled the GFX 1151 architecture for the last couple of months. And now we have finally got some stable support for it. And if you have been using the architecture the past few months, you would have had to have been using an older Linux kernel in combination with an older version of pytorch rocm nightly builds. And that was what was going to give you a stable ride back then. And now, with the recent release of the latest Linux kernels, and I need to make a disclaimer right now. Um, the Linux kernel that I mentioned during the recording of this video was Linux kernel 6.18.10, and that was incorrect. It is actually the correct version is 6.18.4 and above. So I've had told you guys a few times in the recording that it was 6.18.10 and above, but that's incorrect. It's actually 6.18.4 and above, which will give you a good ride, and that's a broader, wider range of Linux kernels that you can choose from. So in addition to that, if you will also need to be using a AMD GPU firmware that was released after January 2026. That will give the combination of those two will give you a very stable ride. And one last component that you're going to be needing to use is the latest PyTorch rocm builds, and you can get them from Docker Hub directly from the rocm project themselves. So I'm going to be including all that information in the exit slide. Now, there's one last thing I need to mention is that the first few minutes of the recording is the audio is very bad, so I do apologize for that. I did correct it, and I have tried to my best to um, use FFmpeg to boost it a bit so you can hear it a bit better, but it's not perfect, so I do apologize. But let's just get straight into the video now.
Okay, so Docker has now finished starting up, and Comfy UI is now got its serving its data now on this port 8188. So I'm going to go and try and access it. And just refresh. I'm already there, so I'm just going to refresh just to make sure that we get there again. Okay, great. So have a look over here at the VRAM being used. It's only 7 gigabytes because right now it's only the upscaler that's the AI upscaler that's using the VRAM at the moment, or the GPU, I should say. And I'm going to go over to this. So I'm going to go over to this workflow that I've had before, and this one would always crash. Will be on the old setup. I'm just going to say sharp slowly runs of the viewer's perspective. Uh, Obviously, I tend to be a bit nervous when I'm recording. I always make funny mistakes. Okay, so actually, going to go and I'm going to start this, and we're going to see if we get any crashes or anything like that. Got to keep an eye on the VRAM as it keeps stacking. I'm going to go and unpause. So bearing in mind we do have another job running at the same time. Looking at this, it seems to be loading up everything. So one thing I did notice, and it is actually expected, is that the GFX activity is at 100%, which is what we expect, especially since we have two very GPU intensive loads running at the moment. So I have been monitoring this, guys, and it is now progressed to the first step. It's finished doing the first step, I should say, and the VRAM hasn't stacked that much. I'm expecting what will happen is the VRAM is not going to stack until the end of this. Keeps getting in the way, and it pisses me off. Now. So yeah, this is going to keep progressing, and it's not going to stack. And what should happen is once it reaches the end here, we should see it offload the VRAM. That's if anybody's actually watching at that point. We should see it offload the VRAM, and then it should go and load the next model, and the size should spike back to approximately 41 gigabytes.
So, guys, I can only give you the highlights right now because I had a nap and I missed the main events. And unfortunately, I missed when it stepped over from advanced case sampler 1 to advanced case sampler 2. But when it did do that, it didn't look like there was any hiccups. It did stack a little bit more on the VRAM, but it didn't stack that much. It only stacked about another 10 gigabytes on top of the VRAM. We're running around about maybe 50 gigabytes in total, with the video upscaler going at the same time. So while doing a very AI intensive video upscaling job, upscaling frame by frame, I was able to do my very intensive comfy UI job that would have usually have crashed under the old rocm 7.1 build with an old kernel. So like the jobs that were crashing on the older architecture with the older kernel and the older drivers, we no longer have that problem at the moment. So this was very stable. I ran two very intensive AI jobs for a very long period. I think they were running to get alongside for about maybe 5 hours. No crashes, no running out of memory. If you do want to improve the VRAM situation a little bit more on comfy UI side, you can do so by enabling the flag called disable smart memory, which exists in the Python.main as a parameter. So if I just go and I say Python, and then I just quickly go and see what the parameters are there, you will see that there's a number of parameters that you can choose from, which you probably aren't aware of in Comfy UI. So, and then main.py, and we go help. So if you have a look, there's a lot of parameters that will help you with manage memory if you're having issues with memory, and it explains exactly what each of these do. So this was the switch that we used, and that helps to offload VRAM. So there is other switches that we can use. There is the if we disable smart memory, that is actually quite useful in tight VRAM situations because it forces Comfy UI to aggressively offload to the regular RAM. But so any model that's not being used is going to be cached on regular RAM instead of VRAM, which is going to make your life a lot easier if you have type VRAM constraints, which you shouldn't have on this particular build if you've got an 8. So you may be wondering how I managed to get my stable experience on the Strix Halo um, Radeon 8060S graphics environment, which is also known as GFX 1151. So the way that I did this is I had a look at the various information that had been coming out relating to the driver situation for AMD, which had basically crippled the Strix Halo architecture for 2 months, and it was a brand new architecture out in the market. I got it for Christmas, and I wasn't able to use it. So after a while, we got a bit of information started leaking out to the public, and people started to get in a clear picture and starting to explain to what the situation was. Long story short is AMD released the hardware. Then AMD released a patch at the same time. Linux released a patch, a kernel update. So AMD released a firmware update, and then Linux released a kernel update. The combination of the two broke the Strix Halo architecture and rendered it pretty much useless. And the only way you could use it was to roll back to an older Linux kernel and use an older nightly build of rocm drivers from in Python, and that was the only way that I was able to get my applications running. I don't know about non-Python applications, but most of the applications I'm using are Python based, so I can only talk for the Python stuff. But here is the setup that I use to get a clean, stable ride. So firstly, the Docker image that I've been running the PyTorch environment is coming from directly from the rocm project, which is AMD themselves. And then I've specified and pinned a specific version of PyTorch, and that is what I have been running in my Docker container. And then I've been in combination with that. So I've been using the 7.2 latest 7.2.0 nightly build. So that's what the ones that I would suggest you guys use. And in combination with a Linux kernel that is later than version 6.18.10. I'm on point 12, so I'm good. And then the AMD GPU firmware. That update came out in January. So if you got an AMD GPU firmware later than the 260110 or later, then you're good. You will have a stable ride, guaranteed. You may have a bit of problems getting that up and running. I might do a video on that just for you guys. If you guys think that is beneficial, I can perfectly fine with doing a video about that for you guys. Just let me know in the comments, and I'll put something together. Okay, guys, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good experience running your your Strix Halo environments. That brings us to the end of our video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'm going to be leaving a summary of what you need to do, what minimum versions you need to get the Strix Halo running stable on your Linux environment. I will be also including the link to the Docker Hub image in the description of this YouTube video. Just like many other people in the software industry, I unfortunately have been laid off due to an AI that has been able to do my job better, apparently. And after many happy years at Atlassian and leaving, I've had to leave this happy Jira and Confluence family, and I am now looking for work. So if anybody is looking for a AI savvy systems engineer, please hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll be leaving my LinkedIn in the description.